I felt the sting of my mother-in-law's palm across my face, the force sending me crashing into the dining room wall. As I touched my burning cheek, my sister-in-law's spit landed on my forehead, while my brother-in-law's laughter echoed through their mansion. "Gold digger," they screamed, convinced my husband Marcus was thousands of miles away in Afghanistan. They thought they had me cornered, helpless and alone. But then the front door opened, and the sound of military boots on marble made them freeze. 6 months before that nightmare evening, I never imagined my life would take such a dramatic turn. My name is Aiden, and at 28 years old, I thought I had my life figured out. Working as a pediatric nurse at Hartford Children's Hospital, I spent my days caring for sick children and my evenings volunteering at the Veterans Support Center downtown. It was during one of those volunteer shifts that I first met Marcus Wellington. The charity was hosting its annual gala to raise funds for wounded warriors, and I was manning the silent auction table when he approached, standing at 6 feet 2 inches with broad shoulders that filled out his dress blues perfectly. He had the kind of presence that made everyone in the room take notice. But it wasn't his impressive military bearing that caught my attention. It was the gentleness in his hazel eyes when he knelt down to speak with a young girl in a wheelchair, the daughter of a wounded veteran. "You must be the nurse everyone's been telling me about," he said when he finally made his way to my table. His smile was warm and genuine, nothing like the polished, practiced smiles I'd seen from other attendees that night. "They say you've been volunteering here every week for 3 years. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. The veterans deserve so much more than what we can give them. This is the least I can do. Our conversation flowed naturally from there. Marcus told me about his role as a Special Forces captain, though he remained modest about his achievements. He spoke passionately about his commitment to his soldiers and his desire to make a difference. What struck me most was how he listened, really listened, when I shared my own story. I grew up in foster care. I admitted something I rarely told people so quickly. Bounced around between homes from age 7 to 18. The military families were always the kindest to me. They understood what it meant to sacrifice to serve something bigger than yourself. That's why I volunteer here. Instead of the usual pitying look I received when sharing my background, Marcus's expression showed only respect. "That kind of resilience is rare," he said. "Most people who've been through what you have would be bitter, but you turned it into compassion." We talked until the gala ended, and then continued our conversation at a 24-hour diner nearby. Over coffee and pie, we discovered shared values, similar dreams, and an undeniable connection. Marcus walked me to my car as the sun began to rise, and I knew my life had just changed forever. Our courtship was intense, but genuine. Between his training schedules and my 12-hour hospital shifts, we treasured every moment together. Marcus introduced me to his world, taking me to military balls and unit barbecues where I felt immediately welcomed by his brothers in arms and their families. He attended my hospital's Christmas party, charming my colleagues with his respectful manner and obvious devotion to me. 3 months into our relationship, Marcus received deployment orders. We were having dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant when he broke the news. "I've been assigned to a 12-month deployment in Afghanistan," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I leave in 8 weeks. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to remain strong. This was the reality of loving a soldier. "We'll get through it," I assured him, squeezing his fingers. "People have survived much longer separations." "But marry me," he said, suddenly, dropping to one knee right there in the restaurant. The other diners gasped and pulled out their phones, but I only had eyes for Marcus. "I know it's fast, and I know it's not fair to ask you to wait for me, but Aiden, I can't imagine deploying without knowing you'll be here when I come home. You're my anchor, my reason to fight harder to make it back." Through tears of joy, I said yes. We married a week later at the courthouse with only his best friend Jake and my foster sister Emma as witnesses. It was perfect in its simplicity, just two people promising to love each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. "I should introduce you to my family," Marcus said after our small wedding dinner. His expression grew complicated, a shadow passing over his features. "Fair warning, they're difficult." That turned out to be the understatement of the century. The Wellington family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut looked like something from a movie. The circular driveway led to a massive colonial mansion with perfectly manicured grounds. I felt increasingly out of place in my simple sundress as Marcus parked his truck next to a line of luxury vehicles. Eleanor Wellington answered the door herself, and I knew immediately that Marcus had inherited none of his warmth from his mother. She was a carefully preserved woman in her late 50s with platinum blonde hair styled in a perfect bob and cold blue eyes that assessed me like I was livestock at auction. "So you're the girl who trapped my son into marriage," she said instead of hello. Her gaze traveled from my department store dress to my sensible flats with obvious disdain. "Marcus, darling, we need to discuss this privately." "Mother, this is Aiden, my wife," Marcus said firmly, keeping his arm around my waist. "And there's nothing to discuss. We're married, and I'm deploying soon. I wanted you to meet her and welcome her to the family." The lunch that followed was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. Eleanor interrogated me about my background, her face growing stonier with each answer. When I mentioned growing up in foster care, her sister-in-law, Brittany, actually gasped. "No family at all," Brittany asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She was a few years younger than me, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "How unusual. Marcus, you certainly know how to surprise us." Derek, Marcus's younger brother, kept staring at me in a way that made my skin crawl. While Marcus was in the bathroom, he leaned close and whispered, "You hit the jackpot, didn't you? From foster care to the Wellington fortune. That's quite the upgrade." I wanted to tell him that I didn't even know about their money when I met Marcus, that I loved him for his character and kindness, but I bit my tongue. Making a scene would only give them more ammunition against me. The visit reached its low point when Eleanor cornered Marcus in his father's old study. I could hear their raised voices through the door. "She's after your trust fund," Eleanor insisted. "Why else would someone like her rush into marriage with a man about to deploy? She's counting on you not coming back so she can inherit everything." "That's enough." Marcus's voice was sharp with anger. "Aiden doesn't even know about the trust fund because I haven't told her yet. And when I do, I'll make sure she knows it comes with strings attached, namely having to deal with you. If anyone's going to drive her away, Mother, it'll be your poisonous attitude, not money or deployment." When we left that afternoon, I was shaking. Marcus pulled over a few miles from the house and took me in his arms. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into my hair. "They've always been like this. Dad was the buffer between us, and since he died 2 years ago, Mother's become even worse. She's obsessed with protecting the family fortune, convinced everyone's trying to steal from us." "Maybe we should have waited," I said, though the thought of not being married to Marcus made my chest tight. "Given them time to get to know me." "No," he said firmly. "I love you and I want you to be my wife. They'll come around or they won't. Either way, you're my family now, the only family that matters." That night, Marcus told me about the trust fund his grandfather had established. Each Wellington child received access to their portion at age 30 or upon marriage, whichever came first. It was a substantial amount more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But Marcus also explained how his mother had used that money to control his siblings, holding it over their heads to force compliance with her wishes. "I don't care about the money," I told him honestly. "I make good money as a nurse. We don't need it." "I know you don't care," he said, kissing my forehead. "That's one of the million reasons I love you. But I want to make sure you're taken care of while I'm gone. I'm adding you to my accounts and making sure you have full access to everything. If something happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen to you," I interrupted, unable to bear the thought. "You're going to complete your deployment and come home to me. That's an order, soldier." He smiled at my attempt at military authority. Yes, ma'am. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Marcus updated all his paperwork, ensuring I was listed as his next of kin and beneficiary. He introduced me to the family readiness group leader who would be my lifeline to information during his deployment. We spent every possible moment together, storing up memories to sustain us through the coming year. 2 nights before he was scheduled to leave, Marcus came home from base with a strange expression. "There's been a change," he said, pulling me into his arms. "My deployment's been moved up. I leave tomorrow morning." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Tomorrow? But we were supposed to have 2 more days. "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Operation security means they can change things at the last minute. I just found out an hour ago." We spent that last night holding each other, talking about our plans for when he returned. We'd find a little house near base, maybe get a dog, start the family we both wanted. Neither of us slept too aware that these were our last hours together for a year. What I didn't tell him was that I'd taken a pregnancy test that morning. The 2 pink lines had stared back at me, confirmation of the new life growing inside me. I'd planned a special dinner to share the news, wanting to give him something joyful to carry with him through his deployment. But with the sudden change in timeline, I made a different decision. Marcus had enough to worry about in a war zone. He needed to focus on his mission and coming home safe. I'd tell him about the baby when he returned, when I could place his hand on my swollen belly and share the joy properly. It would be my secret to guard my strength, to draw on during the lonely months ahead. Standing on the tarmac the next morning, surrounded by other military families saying goodbye, I kept my hand pressed discreetly against my still flat stomach. "Come back to me," I whispered as Marcus held me one last time. "Always," he promised, kissing me deeply. "You're my reason to come home, Aiden. Never doubt that." As I watched his unit board the transport plane, I had no idea that his family had already begun planning my destruction. The enemy I'd need to fight wasn't across an ocean in Afghanistan. They were right here in Connecticut, wearing designer clothes and frozen smiles, convinced I was a threat to their perfectly ordered world. But I was a survivor. I'd survived 17 foster homes, abuse, neglect, and a system that told me I'd never amount to anything. I'd survived to become a nurse, to find love, to create the family I'd always dreamed of. I just didn't know yet how much that survival skill would be tested in the months to come. The first week after Marcus deployed passed in a haze of adjustment. I threw myself into work at the hospital, taking extra shifts to keep my mind occupied. The pregnancy exhaustion hit hard in the evenings, but I welcomed it as a sign that our baby was growing strong. I started a journal for Marcus, documenting each day so I could share everything when he returned. It was 10 days after his departure when Eleanor made her first move. I came home from a particularly grueling 12-hour shift to find her sitting in her silver Mercedes outside my apartment building. My heart sank as she emerged, designer heels clicking on the pavement. "We need to talk," she announced, inviting herself into my home as I unlocked the door. Her nose wrinkled at my modest 1-bedroom apartment, taking in the second-hand furniture and Marcus's military photos on every surface. This is where my son was living. This is where we were happy. I corrected exhaustion, making me less diplomatic than usual. "What do you need, Eleanor?" She settled onto my couch uninvited, placing her purse precisely beside her. "I've been thinking about your situation. A young woman all alone while her husband is deployed. It must be frightening." Something in her tone set off warning bells. "I'm managing fine. The family readiness group has been wonderful, and I have friends at work." "Still," she continued, examining her manicured nails, "accidents happen, break-ins, assaults. This neighborhood isn't exactly safe. I'd feel terrible if something happened to you while Marcus was away." The threat was subtle but clear. "Are you trying to scare me?" Her laugh was like ice cracking. "Of course not, dear. I'm trying to help. In fact, I insist you have dinner with the family this Sunday. It's what Marcus would want for us to take care of you." Every instinct screamed danger, but I couldn't give her ammunition by refusing. Fine, what time? After she left, I called Emma immediately. My foster sister had been my rock since we aged out of the system together, and she knew trouble when she heard it. She's planning something, Emma said after I recounted the visit. Rich people like that don't suddenly develop family feelings. Watch your back, Aiden. Sunday dinner was an orchestrated nightmare. I arrived to find not just the immediate family, but a table full of Eleanor's society friends, all eager to inspect Marcus's rushed wartime bride. The interrogation was relentless. No family at all. How tragic, one woman commented over the soup course. And you met at a charity event. How convenient, another added. Brittany had positioned herself as my apparent new best friend, asking invasive questions with a sympathetic smile. It must be so hard managing on just a nurse's salary now. I mean, Marcus was helping with expenses before. Wasn't he? I've always supported myself, I replied evenly, though my hand trembled slightly on my water glass. The morning sickness had been brutal, and the smell of the rich food wasn't helping. Derek kept finding excuses to touch me a hand on my back as he pulled out my chair fingers, brushing mine as he passed the salt. Each contact made my skin crawl, but calling him out would only create a scene Eleanor could use against me. The evening took a darker turn when Eleanor produced a thick folder. I took the liberty of having our family lawyer draw up some paperwork, she announced. Just some basic protections for you while Marcus is gone. Power of attorney in case of emergency, that sort of thing. I flipped through the documents, my nursing education, helping me parse the legal language. Hidden among legitimate-looking forms were provisions that would give Eleanor control over Marcus's assets if anything happened to me. I'll need to review these with my own lawyer, I said, closing the folder. Eleanor's smile tightened. Of course! Though I'm surprised you have a lawyer, they're quite expensive. The JAG office provides free legal consultation to military spouses. I replied, grateful for the briefing Marcus had given me. The room fell silent. Apparently, they hadn't expected me to know my resources. Over the following weeks, the harassment escalated. Eleanor began showing up at my apartment at all hours, always with some excuse. She needed Marcus's birth certificate for insurance purposes. She wanted to organize his belongings. She insisted on driving me to my prenatal appointment, though I hadn't told her about the pregnancy. How did you know I had a doctor's appointment? I asked when she ambushed me in the hospital parking lot. Oh, Brittany has a friend who works in scheduling, she said breezily. We're just looking out for you, dear. The violation of my privacy was staggering. I started finding evidence of someone entering my apartment while I was at work. Nothing stolen, just subtle signs, a drawer left slightly open. My mail reorganized Marcus's letters to me, moved from where I'd left them. I changed the locks, but it happened again. The building manager, suddenly cold toward me, claimed no one had requested entry. When I mentioned getting security cameras, he informed me that would violate my lease. Since when? I demanded. Since always? He replied, not meeting my eyes. Mrs. Wellington, your lease clearly states no modifications to the unit. So Eleanor had gotten to him too. Money talked, and the Wellingtons had plenty to spread around. The family's campaign intensified through calculated channels. Brittany created a Wellington Family Updates group chat, deliberately excluding me while making sure I knew it existed. She'd mention it casually whenever we were forced together, sharing inside jokes and family plans I wasn't privy to. Oh, you didn't get the message about the family portrait session, she asked with false innocence at another mandatory dinner. I could have sworn I added you to the group. Technology is so tricky. Derek's behavior grew bolder. During a family gathering at their country club, he cornered me by the pool house. You look stressed, he said, standing too close. Marcus always said I should take care of you while he's gone. Maybe you need someone to help you relax. Back off, Derek, I said firmly, trying to sidestep him. He blocked my path, his hand settling on my waist. Come on, Aiden. We both know why you married my brother. At least with me, you wouldn't have to wait for the life insurance payout. I shoved him away hard enough that he stumbled. Touch me again and I'll file a police report. His expression turned ugly. Who would believe you? The foster kid gold digger versus the Wellington family, please. That night, I composed a long email to Marcus detailing everything that had happened. But when I hit send, it bounced back. Confused, I tried again with the same result. A call to the FRG leader revealed that Marcus's unit was in a communications blackout due to their mission, no mail in or out indefinitely. The isolation felt suffocating. Cut off from Marcus, harassed by his family, I turned to work for solace. But even that became complicated when I started experiencing severe nausea and dizziness during shifts. My supervisor, concerned, insisted I see a doctor. The diagnosis was hyperemesis gravidarum, severe morning sickness requiring IV fluids and medication. The hospital bills started mounting immediately. My insurance covered basic care, but the specialized treatment pushed me into debt within weeks. Let me help, Eleanor offered, when she learned about my condition through her network of spies. Medical bills can be so overwhelming. All you need to do is sign a simple power of attorney, just temporary, of course, until you're feeling better. I'm managing. I lied mentally, calculating how many extra shifts I'd need to cover the growing bills. Pride goeth before a fall, dear, she warned. Marcus would be devastated if he knew you were struggling while he was away serving his country. The stress took its toll. During a particularly bad episode, I collapsed at work and woke up in the emergency room. Emma flew in from Boston, taking time off from her job to care for me. This is killing you, she said bluntly, holding my hair back as I retched into a basin. The stress from those vultures is making the pregnancy complications worse. I can't let them win, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Marcus trusted me to be strong. Being strong doesn't mean facing this alone, Emma countered. She started documenting everything, taking photos of my injuries from falls during dizzy spells, recording the dates and times of Eleanor's harassment, keeping copies of all the suspicious paperwork. It was Emma who discovered the extent of Eleanor's interference. While I slept off another round of IV medications, she went through my mail and found dozens of unopened letters hidden in places I'd never look. Letters from Marcus. Aiden, she said, waking me gently, you need to see this. With shaking hands, I read my husband's words. Letter after letter expressing confusion and hurt that I hadn't written back. Asking if I was okay, if I'd forgotten him already. The most recent one was heartbreaking. I don't understand what's happening. Your silence is killing me. Have you decided our marriage was a mistake? Please just write one word so I know you're alive. I love you. I'll always love you. But I need to know if you still want me to come home to you. She's been intercepting my mail. I breathed, fury cutting through the nausea. She's making him think I abandoned him. Emma helped me piece together the scheme. Eleanor had bribed the building manager to give her access to the mailboxes. She was stealing Marcos's letters before I could see them and preventing mine from being sent. The goal was clear: destroy our marriage while Marcus was deployed and vulnerable. We need to go to the police, Emma insisted. With what proof? She's too smart to leave evidence. It would be my word against hers, and Derek was right. Who's going to believe me? But I wasn't giving up. Using the battalion's emergency contact system, I managed to get a message through to Marcus's commanding officer. It was brief, just explaining the communication issues and asking him to tell Marcus I loved him and was waiting for him. Whether it would reach him during the blackout, I didn't know. The final straw came then when I discovered strange charges on my credit cards. Designer purchases I'd never made, cash advances I hadn't taken. The fraud pushed my accounts to their limits, destroying my carefully maintained credit. When I confronted Eleanor, she smiled serenely. Identity theft is such a problem these days. Perhaps if you had someone more experienced managing your finances. You did this, I accused. Prove it, she challenged, knowing I couldn't. The campaign was working. Isolated from Marcus, drowning in debt, physically weakened by pregnancy complications, I was exactly where Eleanor wanted me, desperate and alone. But she'd underestimated one thing. She thought foster kids were broken, easy targets. She didn't understand that surviving the system had given me something her money couldn't buy: resilience forged in the hardest fires. I wasn't broken, I was a survivor. And I was about to prove it. November arrived with unusual warmth, the Connecticut autumn stretching longer than normal. 4 months had passed since Marcus deployed, 4 months of Eleanor's escalating psychological warfare. My pregnancy was now visible, despite the weight loss from hyperemesis, my small bump, the only bright spot in increasingly dark days. I'd managed to stabilize somewhat, finding ways to work around Eleanor's interference. Emma helped me open a post office box in a different town for Marcus's letters. I changed hospitals for my prenatal care, driving 40 minutes to avoid Eleanor's network of informants. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. The invitation to Thanksgiving dinner came through Brittany, delivered with her trademark false sweetness during one of her ambush visits to the hospital. "Mother insists you join us," she said, catching me between patient rounds. "It's Marcus's favorite holiday. She has all his traditional dishes planned. It would break her heart if you weren't there." Everything in me screamed danger, but refusing would give them more ammunition. "What time?" 2:00. And Aiden, her smile turned predatory. "It's just family. Don't bring that foster sister of yours." The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke with an overwhelming sense of dread. My baby seemed to sense it too, kicking more actively than usual. I dressed carefully in my best maternity outfit, a simple navy dress that Marcus had bought me before deploying. "Just a few hours," I told my reflection. "You can survive anything for a few hours." I arrived at the Wellington estate to find the circular driveway empty except for the family's vehicles. No extended relatives, no society friends, just the core family. My unease deepened. Eleanor greeted me at the door, wearing winter white, her smile sharp as a blade. "Aiden, darling, don't you look maternal?" The dining room was set for 5, but a 6th place setting caught my eye. A briefcase sat on the chair, leather portfolio placed precisely on the plate. "Are we expecting someone else?" I asked. "In a manner of speaking," Eleanor replied, gesturing for me to sit. "We have some family business to discuss before dinner." Derek appeared from the study, followed by Brittany carrying a stack of documents. They moved with practiced coordination like actors taking their marks. The 6th chair scraped back, and a man in an expensive suit emerged from the shadows. "This is Mr. Harrison, from Harrison, Klein and Associates," Eleanor announced. "He's been the Wellington family attorney for 20 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. Why do we need a lawyer for Thanksgiving dinner? Because this intervention is long overdue. Eleanor said, her mask finally dropping completely. "Sit down, Aiden. We have papers for you to sign." Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase with clinical efficiency, spreading documents across the table where turkey and stuffing should have been. "Mrs. Wellington, these are divorce papers citing abandonment and mental cruelty. Your signature is required on pages 3, 7, and 12. The room spun. I gripped the table edge, forcing myself to stay upright. "Abandonment! I haven't abandoned anyone. Marcus and I are fine." "Are you—" Brittany produced her phone with a flourish. "Because I have some interesting photos that suggest otherwise." She scrolled through image after image, me walking with Dr. James Chen, my colleague from the hospital. Pictures taken from angles that showed us laughing, his hand on my arm as he steadied me during a dizzy spell, the two of us leaving the hospital together after our shifts. "James is a friend," I said, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my throat. "He's been helping me manage my pregnancy symptoms at work." How convenient, Derek drawled, moving to block the dining room exit. A handsome doctor friend who just happens to be there whenever you need him. Tell me, does Marcus know about Dr. Chen? There's nothing to know. I stood, but a wave of dizziness forced me back down. James is married with 3 kids. We work together. That's it. Eleanor slid another document forward. Then you won't mind explaining these bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals. Money disappearing from Marcus's accounts transferred to offshore holdings. I stared at the fabricated evidence. The statements showed transactions I'd never made. Money moved to accounts I didn't recognize. These are forged. I haven't touched Marcus's money except for household expenses. The bank records say otherwise, Mr. Harrison interjected. Combined with evidence of infidelity and your failure to maintain contact with your deployed husband, we have substantial grounds for an at-fault divorce. She's been stealing his letters, I exclaimed. Ask her about that. Eleanor's laugh was crystalline and cold. Paranoid delusions now. How tragic. Pregnancy hormones can cause such instability. The trap was perfectly sprung. Every move I made tangled me further in their web. Derek had repositioned himself behind my chair, his presence looming and threatening. Brittany continued scrolling through photos, each more damaging than the last when taken out of context. "Whoa, sign the papers," Eleanor commanded. "Take the $20,000 settlement we're generously offering and disappear. It's more than a foster child could ever hope for." "I'm carrying Marcus's baby," I said quietly. "Your grandchild." The room went still. Eleanor's face went from pale to ashen. "You're lying." I pulled out my ultrasound, photo hands shaking. 16 weeks, due in April. Brittany snatched the image, studying it with growing alarm. "Mother, if she's really pregnant?" "It's not Marcus's," Eleanor declared with vicious certainty. "Look at the timeline. She was already pregnant when she trapped him into marriage. That's why the rushed wedding. She needed a father for her bastard." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "How dare you? Marcus is the only man I've ever been with." Prove it," Derek challenged, his breath hot on my neck. "Take a paternity test when it's born. If it's really Marcus's, we'll welcome you back with open arms." By then, Marcus will have moved on," Eleanor added smoothly. "Sign the papers, now take the money, and spare everyone the embarrassment of a public divorce. Otherwise, we'll destroy you in court. A foster child with no family, no resources against the Wellington legal team. You know how this ends." I reached for my purse, intending to call Emma, but Brittany was faster. She grabbed my phone, dancing back when I lunged for it. "No outside interference," she sing-songed. "This is a family matter." "I'm not signing anything," I said, forcing steel into my voice. "Marcus loves me. When he comes home—" "If he comes home," Eleanor interrupted. "His unit has taken heavy casualties. Did you know that? Of course not, since you haven't bothered to stay in contact with the FRG. 3 soldiers from his battalion killed last month. For all we know, Marcus is already dead, and you're just waiting for the life insurance payout." The casual cruelty of her words stole my breath. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that about your own son." "My son was a fool," she spat, throwing away his heritage for some trash he pulled out of the gutter. "But I'll fix his mistake. One way or another, you'll be gone before he returns." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Mrs. Wellington, if you refuse to sign voluntarily, we'll proceed with filing. The evidence we've compiled will destroy your reputation. No hospital will hire a nurse accused of fraud and adultery. You'll lose everything." "I've already lost everything," I said, standing despite the dizziness. "My husband is fighting a war while his family wages one against me. But I made him a promise to be here when he returns, and unlike you, I keep my promises." Derek's hand clamped down on my shoulder, forcing me back into the chair. "You're not going anywhere until this is resolved." "That's assault," I warned. "Remove your hand." What assault?" He smiled coldly. "I don't see any witnesses except family." Brittany had moved to the windows, checking something on her phone. The housekeepers have the day off, and the security system is conveniently offline for maintenance. Funny how technology fails at the most opportune times. The full scope of their planning became clear. They'd orchestrated this ambush down to the smallest detail, ensuring no witnesses, no evidence of their coercion. I was trapped in a house with people who'd spent months planning my destruction. You know what I find interesting? Eleanor circled my chair like a predator. How a foster child with no connection suddenly appears at a veterans charity event. How she immediately targets the wealthy soldier. How convenient that she gets pregnant right before he deploys. I didn't know about Marcus's money. I protested for the 100th time. Every gold digger says that, Brittany chimed in. But we did our research, Aiden. That charity keeps donor list public. You knew exactly who had money before you ever volunteered there. It was useless. They'd constructed their narrative and no truth would penetrate it. I tried to stand again, but Derek's grip tightened painfully. Let me go, I demanded. Sign the papers first, Eleanor insisted. This can be easy or hard. Your choice. Mr. Harrison produced a pen, holding it out like a weapon. A simple signature ends this unpleasantness. You walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else. Find another Mark, someone whose family won't protect them. I love my husband, I said, clearly meeting each of their eyes in turn. I will never betray him by signing those papers. Never. Eleanor's composure finally cracked completely. Her hand moved so fast I didn't see it coming until my face exploded in pain. The slap sent me sideways, Derek releasing me as I crashed into the wall. My head spun as I slumped to the floor, instinctively curling to protect my stomach. But they weren't done. Brittany stood over me, her designer heel inches from my face. You pathetic piece of trash, she hissed and then spat. The warm saliva hit my forehead, dripping down as Derek's laughter echoed off the walls. Look at her, he gasped between guffaws. The great love story ends with her exactly where she belongs, on the floor like the garbage she is. I wiped the spit away with shaking hands, fury finally overtaking fear. These people had tormented me for months, isolated me from my husband, tried to steal my child's father. No more. You're right about one thing, I said, using the wall to pull myself upright. This does end today, but not how you think. Eleanor advanced again, hand raised for another strike. You dare threaten us! I'm done being your victim, I shot back. Hit me again. Leave more marks. Make it easier for the police to believe me. What police? Derek scoffed. You think they'll come running for some foster trash? This is Greenwich, sweetheart. The cops work for families like ours. That's when we all heard it. The unmistakable rumble of a military vehicle in the driveway, the rhythmic thud of combat boots on stone. Eleanor's face went white as the front door opened without a knock, and 3 sets of footsteps echoed in the marble foyer. Actually, a familiar voice called out, "Some of us work for the United States Army, and we take a very dim view of civilians assaulting military spouses." The dining room door swung open, and my world tilted on its axis. Marcus stood in the doorway, still in his combat uniform, desert dust on his boots. Beside him stood his commanding officer and a JAG lawyer, both in full-dress uniforms. His eyes found mine immediately, taking in my position on the floor, the red mark on my face, the spit still glistening on my skin. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees as his expression went from concern to lethal fury. "Hello, Mother," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm home." Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Marcus stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, his presence filling the room with barely contained rage. His unit commander, Colonel Rodriguez, flanked him on one side, while Captain Sarah Bennett from JAG stood on the other, both wearing expressions of professional disgust. Eleanor recovered first, her politician's smile sliding into place. "Marcus, darling." "What a wonderful surprise. We weren't expecting you for months yet." Clearly, Marcus said, not moving from the doorway. His eyes never left mine as I struggled to my feet, using the wall for support. Aiden, baby, are you hurt? I'm okay, I managed, though my legs shook beneath me. She fell, Brittany interjected quickly. Pregnancy, clumsiness. We were just helping her up when you arrived. Derek stepped back from me, as if I were radioactive, his earlier bravado evaporating. Yeah, just a little accident. You know how women get when they're hormonal? Marcus's jaw tightened. Colonel Rodriguez, Captain Bennett. I'd like you to note the red handprint on my wife's face and what appears to be saliva on her forehead. Aiden doesn't fall in patterns that match palm strikes. Noted, Captain Wellington. Colonel Rodriguez replied formally. Mrs. Wellington, do you require medical attention? She's being dramatic. Eleanor cut in before I could answer. There's been a misunderstanding. We were having a family discussion about protecting Marcus's interests while he was deployed. With divorce papers? Marcus asked mildly, glancing at the documents spread across the table. How thoughtful of you to protect my interests by trying to destroy my marriage. Mr. Harrison began gathering his papers hastily. I should go. This is clearly a family matter that no longer requires legal intervention. Ye sit down, Harrison, Captain Bennett commanded. As a JAG officer, I'm very interested in these documents you've prepared, especially since they appear to contain fraudulent financial statements and illegally obtained photographs. The lawyer froze briefcase half-packed. I don't know what you mean. Everything was prepared according to my client's instructions based on evidence they provided. But Marcus repeated the word like it tasted bad. Let me tell you about evidence, Mother. 3 weeks ago, I received an emergency Red Cross message that my wife was hospitalized and unconscious. Imagine my surprise when I couldn't get any information from her supposed next of kin. My heart clenched. You knew, but you were in a blackout. The blackout ended 2 weeks ago, he said gently. When I couldn't reach you and found out you'd never received any of my letters, I knew something was very wrong. Colonel Rodriguez authorized emergency leave for me to investigate. Investigate? Eleanor's voice pitched higher. Your paranoid wife has infected you with her delusions. Delusions. Colonel Rodriguez pulled out a tablet. Like the delusion that someone has been intercepting military mail, a federal offense, or the delusion that someone has been accessing Captain Wellington's wife's medical records without authorization, violating HIPAA laws? Don't forget the identity theft, Captain Bennett added. Opening credit accounts in another person's name, making fraudulent charges. The FBI takes financial crimes against military families very seriously. Brittany's phone clattered to the floor. We were just what? Marcus stepped fully into the room, and I saw his siblings shrink back. In that moment, he wasn't their brother. He was a special forces soldier who'd spent 12 years perfecting controlled violence. Just terrorizing my pregnant wife, just trying to steal my child, just committing multiple felonies because you couldn't stand that. I married someone you deemed beneath your social status. How dare you speak to us this way, Eleanor sputtered, after everything we've done for you. Done for me? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean like hiring someone to break into Aiden's apartment? Oh yes, we have him on security footage from the building across the street. He was very cooperative when the MPs questioned him. Gave up your contact information immediately. Derek made a break for the other door, but Colonel Rodriguez's voice cracked like a whip. Mr. Wellington, I strongly advise you not to leave. Local law enforcement is already outside waiting for our signal. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Through the dining room windows, I could see police cars in the driveway, their lights painting red and blue shadows on the mansion walls. You called the police on your own family. Eleanor's mask finally shattered completely. You ungrateful bastard, after I raised you, gave you everything. You gave me money, Marcus corrected, but Aiden gave me love. She gave me a reason to come home from war. And while I was fighting insurgents in Afghanistan, you were waging war on her. He moved to my side, then his arm wrapping carefully around me. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of combat and betrayal. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered. "I should have protected you better." "This is ridiculous," Eleanor declared. "She's nobody, a foster child with no breeding, no class, no family name. She trapped you with that baby that probably isn't even yours." The room went silent. Marcus's body tensed against mine, and I knew he was fighting every instinct trained into him. "Captain Wellington," Colonel Rodriguez said quietly, "remember your discipline." Marcus took a deep breath, then another. When he spoke, his voice was ice. "That nobody you're referring to is my wife, the mother of my child. The woman who worked 12-hour shifts while battling severe pregnancy complications to pay bills that you inflated with your fraud. The strongest person I know who survived your psychological torture without breaking." He pulled out his phone, swiping to reveal a recording app. "But please, Mother, tell me more about how you've been protecting my interests. Captain Bennett is particularly interested in your confession about the mail theft." Eleanor's face went from red to white. "You've been recording this—" "Every word since I walked in," he confirmed. "Just like I've been recording every conversation with your accomplices for the past 48 hours. Did you really think I'd come here unprepared?" Brittany sank into a chair, reality finally hitting. "Marcus, we're family. You wouldn't really have us arrested." "Family." I found my voice, anger giving me strength. "Family doesn't forge evidence of adultery. Family doesn't steal letters from a deployed soldier. Family doesn't assault pregnant women and spit on them like they're animals." "We were protecting the Wellington legacy," Derek protested weakly. "No," Marcus said firmly. "You were protecting your own greed and prejudice. But here's the thing about legacies, Derek. They can change. And mine starts with choosing love over blood integrity over money." Captain Bennett stepped forward. "Mrs. Eleanor Wellington, Miss Brittany Wellington, Mr. Derek Wellington, based on the evidence collected, you're under investigation for mail theft, identity fraud assault, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As she continued reading their rights, police officers entered the dining room. The Wellingtons' carefully constructed world crumbled in real time. Eleanor demanded to call her lawyer, but her usual attorney was already being questioned about his role in the fraudulent divorce papers. Brittany cried prettily, but tears that had always gotten her out of trouble were useless against federal charges. Derek blustered about connections and lawsuits, but his threats rang hollow as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "Marcus, please." Eleanor made one last appeal as an officer guided her toward the door. "I'm your mother. Everything I did was out of love." Marcus looked at her with profound sadness. "No, Mother. Love doesn't try to destroy. Love doesn't isolate and terrorize. What you did came from need to control to possess. That's not love. What Aiden and I have is love. What she showed by enduring your abuse to keep her promise to me is love. You wouldn't recognize it if it stood in front of you." As the police led them out, Mr. Harrison tried to slip away unnoticed. Captain Bennett's voice stopped him cold. "Mr. Harrison, you'll want to contact your own attorney. The Bar Association will be very interested in your role in presenting fraudulent evidence and facilitating harassment of a military spouse." The house fell silent except for the sound of police radios outside. Marcus turned to me fully, his hands infinitely gentle as they touched my face. "Let me see," he said softly, examining the mark Eleanor had left. "We need to get you to a hospital. You and the baby need to be checked." "The baby's okay," I assured him, taking his hand and placing it on my bump, as if in response our child kicked strongly against his palm. Marcus's eyes widened with wonder. That's our baby." "Our baby," I confirmed, tears finally flowing freely. "I wanted to tell you before you left, but when your deployment got moved up, I thought you needed to focus on staying safe." He pulled me against him, carefully mindful of my condition. God, Aiden, knowing you were here, that you were fighting for us, that we had this to come home to, it would have made everything bearable. Captain Wellington, Colonel Rodriguez interrupted gently. The ambulance is here. We should get your wife medical attention, document her injuries properly. Marcus nodded but didn't release me. There's more, Aiden. This isn't over. We found evidence of bigger schemes, plans that go beyond just breaking us up. But first, we need to take care of you. As the paramedics checked me over, I watched the police cars pull away with the Wellington family inside. The mansion that had been my torture chamber for months stood empty, its lights blazing against the November darkness. What happens now? I asked Marcus as we headed to the hospital. His smile was grim but determined. Now we show them what happens when they attack a military family. The investigation is just beginning. Everything they've built on lies and manipulation is about to come crashing down. And us, I touched my stomach where our baby grew. What happens to us? We rebuild, he said simply, away from their poison, their influence. We create the family we choose, not the one I was born into. If you'll still have me after everything they put you through. I squeezed his hand, feeling his wedding ring press against mine. I made a promise. For better or worse, remember. This definitely qualifies as worse, he said with dark humor. Maybe, I agreed, but something tells me the better is about to begin. As we drove away from the Wellington estate, I didn't look back. That chapter of our lives was closing, but the story of our real family, the one built on love and trust, instead of manipulation and greed, was just beginning. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the Connecticut sky. The storm that had been building for months was finally here, and we would weather it together. The hospital emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos, but the staff snapped to attention when Colonel Rodriguez explained the situation. Within minutes, I was in a private room with Marcus by my side, while doctors documented my injuries and checked on our baby. Strong heartbeat, the ultrasound technician assured us, moving the wand across my belly. Very active, too. This little one's a fighter. Like the mother, Marcus murmured, his hand enveloping mine. Captain Bennett entered with a police detective and forensic photographer. Mrs. Wellington, I know this is difficult, but we need to document everything for the case. The clearer our evidence, the harder it'll be for them to escape consequences. For the next hour, they photographed the handprint on my face, the bruises on my shoulder from Derek's grip, and took my detailed statement. Marcus never let go of my hand, though I could feel his rage building with each detail I revealed. There's something else, I said when I finished recounting the Thanksgiving ambush. Emma, my foster sister, has been documenting everything. Photos, recordings, dates. She has boxes of evidence at her apartment in Boston. Captain Bennett's eyes sharpened. We'll need to secure that immediately. Can you contact her? Marcus was already dialing. Emma, it's Marcus. Yes, I'm back. Listen, we need you to gather all the evidence you've collected and meet us. Actually, stay put. I'm sending someone to escort you safely. The Wellingtons might try to interfere once they realize what you have. While he coordinated Emma's protection, Dr. Matthews, the head of obstetrics, entered with a concerned expression. Mrs. Wellington, I have reviewed your medical history from both hospitals. The severity of your hyperemesis combined with the documented stress factors. Frankly, I'm amazed you and the baby have done so well. Hey, she's the strongest person I know, Marcus said fiercely. Still, Dr. Matthews continued, I want to keep you overnight for observation. Your blood pressure is elevated, and given the trauma you've experienced today, we need to monitor you closely. After the medical team left, Marcus and I were finally alone. He sat on the bed beside me, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on my hand. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Not for the case, but for me. I need to understand what you went through. So I did. Every lonely night, every threatening visit, every moment I doubted he'd return. I told him about writing letters he'd never receive, about crying myself to sleep, clutching his pillow about the terror that our child would never know their father. The worst part, I admitted, was when they said you might already be dead, that your unit had taken casualties. I knew they were trying to break me, but the thought that you might be gone and I didn't know. Hey, he pulled me against him carefully. I'm here, I'm real, and I'm not going anywhere. How did you really know something was wrong? I asked. The Red Cross message. His expression darkened. That was the final straw, but I'd suspected for weeks. Your letters just stopped. The ones that did get through seemed off, like someone was screening them. Then Jake got a weird email from Derek fishing for information about our finances. When the Red Cross notification came and I couldn't get straight answers from anyone, I knew they'd made their move. So you came home? Not immediately, he admitted. First, I called in every favor I had. Colonel Rodriguez's daughter went through something similar with her in-laws trying to break up her marriage during deployment. He understood immediately and helped me build a case. We spent 2 days gathering evidence before flying back. A knock interrupted us. Emma burst in accompanied by 2 military police officers, her arms full of boxes. Aiden, oh my God, are you okay? She froze, seeing Marcus. You're back. Thanks for protecting her, Marcus said, standing to take the boxes. We owe you everything. Family protects family, Emma said firmly, even if some people don't understand what that means. Captain Bennett returned with a tablet. Captain Wellington, you need to see this. We've been executing search warrants based on the evidence you provided. The financial fraud goes deeper than we thought. The screen showed bank records, offshore accounts, and property deeds. Your mother has been embezzling from the family trust for years, Bennett explained. Your father set up protections before he died, but she's been systematically dismantling them. Based on these records, she's stolen approximately $4 million. Marcus sank into a chair. $4 million, but the trust was meant for charity work for Dad's veteran programs. It gets worse, Bennett continued. She's been using Derek's gambling debts to launder money. He owes several unsavory characters substantial sums which Eleanor's been paying to keep him out of concrete boots. And Brittany's been skimming from her employer, using her position at the investment firm to redirect funds. They called me a gold digger, I said in disbelief. They tortured me for months over money while they were stealing millions. More projection, Emma observed. They accused you of what they were doing themselves. Captain Bennett pulled up another file. There's more good news. The postal inspector takes mail theft very seriously, especially involving military correspondence. They found a storage unit Eleanor rented with hundreds of pieces of intercepted mail. Not just yours either. She's been tampering with correspondence to control information flow to various family members and business associates. That's federal prison time, Marcus said grimly. Multiple counts. 20 years minimum just for the mail theft, Bennett confirmed. Add the identity fraud assault conspiracy charges. Your mother's looking at spending her golden years behind bars. Over the next hours, the full scope of the investigation unfolded. Officers executed search warrants at the mansion, Brittany's apartment, and Derek's condo. The evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor's detailed plans to destroy our marriage. Financial records of bribes paid to building managers and hospital staff, even a journal where Brittany documented their scheme with disturbing glee. Look at this, Emma said, scrolling through photos on her phone. I've been taking pictures every time I found something suspicious. Like this one, your apartment building security footage being mysteriously erased the day after each break-in. You built an entire case, Captain Bennett said admiringly. This is better documentation than some professional investigators manage. I learned young that evidence is protection, Emma replied. In foster care, if you can't prove abuse, no one believes you. I wasn't letting them do to Aiden what the system did to us. Marcus squeezed my hand. You surrounded yourself with good people, real family. As evening fell, the news broke. Eleanor Wellington's arrest made headlines. The prominent society matron's fall from grace irresistible to local media. My phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, fellow military spouses, even casual acquaintances expressing shock and support. "Tomorrow's gonna be a circus," Marcus warned. "The press will want statements, the family's business partners will panic. Are you ready for this?" I thought about all the nights I'd felt alone, all the times they'd made me doubt my worth, all the moments I'd wondered if I was strong enough. "Let them come," I said. "I'm done hiding, done being ashamed of where I came from. If they want a statement, I'll give them one. Every military spouse who's been abused by their partner's family, every foster kid who's been told they're not good enough, they deserve to know they're not alone." "That's my girl," Marcus said proudly. Colonel Rodriguez knocked and entered. "Captain, we've secured temporary housing on base for you and your wife. Given the circumstances, it's safer than returning to the apartment. We've also assigned protective details until we're certain all co-conspirators have been identified." "Co-conspirators?" I asked. "Your mother-in-law didn't act alone," Rodriguez explained. "She had help from various society contacts, business associates, even some law enforcement connections. We're unraveling the network, but it'll take time." That night, in the safety of base housing with military police stationed outside, Marcus and I finally had time to process everything. We lay in bed, his hand resting on my bump, feeling our baby move. "I'm sorry," he whispered in the darkness. "For what?" "For them. For coming from that toxic family. For putting you through this. You deserved better than being tortured by those monsters." I turned to face him, cupping his face in my hands. "You are not them. You're nothing like them. The fact that you came from that and became the man you are, that's a miracle. And our child will know real love, real family, not the twisted version your mother peddles." "How are you not angry with me?" "Oh, I'm angry," I admitted, "furious, but not at you, at them for trying to destroy something beautiful out of prejudice and greed, at myself for not being stronger, for not fighting back sooner." "You survived 4 months of psychological warfare while growing our child," Marcus said firmly. "That's not weakness, that's extraordinary strength." We talked until dawn, planning our future. The trust fund he'd inherited would be liquidated and donated to veteran causes, just as his father had intended. We'd find a small house near base, build our life on our own terms. No Wellington money, no toxic obligations, just us and our chosen family. "There's something else," Marcus said as the sun painted the sky pink. "My grandmother called while you were sleeping. Dad's mother. She's been estranged from Eleanor for decades. She wants to meet you." "Another Wellington?" I asked warily. "The original Wellington matriarch," he smiled. "The one Eleanor could never control. Grandma Rose built the family fortune herself, starting with nothing. Sound familiar? She says any woman who could survive Eleanor deserves a medal." I laughed for the first time in months, really laughed. "I think I'd like to meet her." "Oh, good." Marcus pulled me closer. "Because she's already on a plane from Montana. She has some very interesting documents about the real family trust. Turns out Eleanor never had as much control as she thought." The tide had turned completely. The predators had become prey, their carefully constructed house of cards collapsing. But more importantly, Marcus was home, our baby was safe, and our real story could finally begin. As I drifted off to sleep in my husband's arms, I thought about Eleanor sitting in a jail cell stripped of her designer clothes and social standing. She tried to destroy me because I had no family name, no prestigious background. She'd forgotten something crucial. Families aren't just about blood and birthrights. They're forged in fire, built on loyalty, strengthened by trial. And the family Marcus and I were building would be stronger than any Wellington legacy. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and shocking revelations. True to Marcus's prediction, the press descended like vultures on the Wellington scandal. Headlines screamed about the society matron's fall, Wellington matriarch arrested for terrorizing military spouse. Elite family's dark secrets exposed. $4 million fraud uncovered in prominent Connecticut family. I gave one interview to a respected military spouse blogger, telling my story in my own words. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of military families reached out with their own stories of civilian relatives trying to destroy their marriages during deployments. My inbox flooded with support advice and shared experiences of survival. "You've started something," Marcus said, reading through the messages with me. "These people needed someone to speak up to show it's not okay to prey on military families." The legal machinery ground forward relentlessly. Eleanor's bail hearing became a spectacle when the judge reviewed the evidence. Her lawyer, a slick Manhattan attorney who'd replaced the compromised Harrison, argued for minimal bail given her community ties. "Oi, community ties," the prosecutor scoffed. "Your client systematically isolated and terrorized a pregnant military spouse while her husband served our country. She stole mail from a deployed soldier. She embezzled millions meant for veteran charities. What community wants ties to that?" Bail was set at $2 million, with strict conditions including GPS monitoring and no contact with witnesses. Eleanor's society friends, the ones who'd helped her harass me, suddenly found themselves very busy with other commitments. The Wellington name, once golden in Connecticut social circles, became toxic overnight. Brittany cracked first. Facing federal charges and the loss of her securities licenses, she negotiated a plea deal. In exchange for testimony against her mother, she'd serve 2 years and pay full restitution to her employer. She kept records of everything, Captain Bennett informed us after Brittany's confession. "Apparently, she was planning to blackmail Eleanor eventually. Your sister-in-law was playing a longer game than anyone realized." The records were damning. Eleanor's plans went back years long before I entered the picture. She'd driven away 2 previous girlfriends of Marcus's through similar tactics. One had attempted suicide after Eleanor's harassment. The other had moved across the country and changed her name. "I could have been them," I told Marcus, shaken by the revelation, "if I hadn't been too stubborn to give up." "But you didn't," he reminded me. "You stayed, you fought, you won." Derek's situation proved more complicated. His gambling debts had attracted dangerous attention, and with Eleanor's funds frozen, he couldn't pay. He ended up in protective custody, testifying about his mother's money laundering in exchange for witness protection. "He's scared," Marcus said after a call with the FBI. "Genuinely terrified. He finally understands that mother's games had real-world consequences. The people she borrowed money from to pay his debts don't accept bankruptcy as payment." I couldn't find much sympathy for Derek, remembering his hands on me, his laughter as I lay on the floor. But watching the family destroy itself still felt surreal. The surprise came from Grandma Rose Wellington, who arrived like a force of nature. At 83, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire from nothing. Her silver hair was styled in a neat bun, her clothes simple but elegant, her eyes the same hazel as Marcus's but sharper, more knowing. "So you're the girl who survived Eleanor," she said when we met, looking me over appraisingly. "Good bones, strong spine, and pregnant too. Well done." "Mrs. Wellington," I began nervously. "Rose," she corrected, "or Grandma Rose if you prefer. I haven't been Mrs. Wellington since I divorced Marcus's grandfather 40 years ago for being a spineless fool. Now let's discuss how we're going to fix this mess my idiot daughter-in-law created." Over tea in our base housing, Rose revealed truths that recontextualized everything. The Wellington fortune, I built that. Started with a food truck after the war, turned it into a restaurant chain, then diversified into real estate. Eleanor married my son for money, thinking she'd hit the jackpot. "But she had control of everything," Marcus protested. Rose smiled sharply. "She had control of what I allowed her to have. The real trust, the one worth $50 million, that's been in my hands all along. Your father knew his wife was a climber, so we structured things carefully. Eleanor got enough to maintain appearances, but the real wealth protected." She produced documents that made Captain Bennett whistle. This is ironclad. Eleanor never had authority over the main trust. Everything she stole came from subsidiary accounts. Why didn't you intervene sooner? I asked, unable to keep accusation from my voice. She tormented people for years. Rose's expression sobered. Because I needed proof of what she was. Legal, undeniable proof. You provided that, dear. Your suffering wasn't in vain. It exposed her completely. My suffering wasn't meant to be evidence, I said coldly. I'm not collateral damage in your family wars. No, Rose agreed, surprising me. You're not, which is why I'm here. The trust has provisions for victims of family members' crimes. You're entitled to compensation for what you endured. More importantly, your child is my great-grandchild, the first of the next generation. I want to ensure their future is secure. Marcus tensed beside me. We don't want Wellington money. We're building our own life. Admirable, Rose nodded. But stupid. Money is a tool, nothing more. Eleanor weaponized it, but that doesn't make the tool evil. Think of what you could do with it. The veteran programs you want to expand. The foster care advocacy Aiden could champion. The education your child deserves. She had a point, though. I hated admitting it. We talked for hours, Rose sharing stories of building her business while raising children, fighting sexism in the corporate world, surviving a toxic marriage. She was nothing like Eleanor, everything like the grandmother I'd imagined having as a child. I'll make you a deal, she finally said. Take a position on the trust board. Help me distribute the wealth to causes that matter. In exchange, I'll ensure Eleanor never troubles you again and that your child inherits what's rightfully theirs. How can you ensure Eleanor won't be a problem? Marcus asked. Rose's smile was razor sharp. Because I own the judges, the prosecutors, and half the defense attorneys in Connecticut. Not through bribes like Eleanor attempted, but through decades of legitimate relationships. She made enemies of people I've spent 50 years cultivating as allies. They're eager to see her fall. True to her word, Rose's influence accelerated the legal process. Eleanor's trial became a masterclass in justice. Witness after witness testified to her schemes, her cruelty, her embezzlement. The Veterans Charity Director spoke about programs canceled due to stolen funds. Former employees revealed years of abuse and illegal activities. I testified on a cold February morning, 7 months pregnant, and finally at peace. I spoke clearly about the harassment, the isolation, the assault. I looked Eleanor in the eye as I described finding Marcus's letters, realizing the depth of her deception. She didn't just try to steal my husband, I concluded. She tried to steal his child's father. She tried to destroy a family before it could even begin. All because I didn't meet her social standards, because I was a foster child who dared to love above my station. Eleanor's expression throughout was stony, but I caught something in her eyes when I mentioned the baby. Regret. Or just anger that her grandchild would be raised beyond her reach. I'd never know, and I didn't care. The verdict was swift guilty on all counts. The sentence was harsh, 25 years federal prison, no possibility of early release, full asset forfeiture to pay restitution. Eleanor Wellington, who'd spent her life looking down on others, would spend her remaining years in a federal corrections facility. Brittany received her 2 years as agreed, serving in a minimum security facility where she'd learned job skills she'd never needed before. Derek vanished into witness protection after testifying his gambling associates, ensuring he'd never safely return to Connecticut. It's over, Marcus said as we left the courthouse for the last time. They can't hurt us anymore. But the best part wasn't the verdicts or the justice. It was what came next. With Rose's guidance, we established the Marcus Wellington Foundation for Military Families. Using recovered funds and trust money, we created programs to support spouses dealing with deployment, especially those facing harassment from civilian family members. Emma became the director of outreach, her foster care experience invaluable in identifying at-risk families. I returned to nursing with new purpose, specializing in treating pregnancy complications in military spouses. The stress of deployment combined with family pressure created unique medical challenges I was perfectly positioned to understand. Our daughter was born on a brilliant April morning with Marcus holding my hand and Rose in the waiting room with Emma. We named her Hope Elizabeth Wellington for the future we'd fought to create and the strength we'd found in darkness. "She's perfect," Marcus whispered, cradling our daughter while I recovered. "Absolutely perfect." "She'll never doubt she's loved," I promised. "Never wonder if she belongs. Never face what we faced." Rose held her great-granddaughter with tears in her eyes. "The first Wellington in generations born to love instead of manipulation. You've broken the cycle." As I write this, Hope is 3 months old, sleeping peacefully in her nursery. The walls are painted with murals of strong women from history, a gift from the military spouse support group I now lead. Marcus is home from his final deployment, transitioning to a training position that keeps him stateside. Eleanor remains in federal prison, her appeals exhausted. She's written several letters I haven't opened, probably never will. Brittany reached out after her release, working now as a bookkeeper for a veterans nonprofit, slowly earning redemption. Derek is gone somewhere in Middle America with a new name and old debts that will follow him forever. But that's their story, not ours. Our story is about building something beautiful from ashes, about choosing love over fear, family over blood. It's about the strength found in sisterhood, whether biological, like Emma, or chosen, like the military spouses who rallied around me. Most importantly, it's about transformation. Eleanor thought she was protecting the Wellington legacy by destroying anyone she deemed unworthy. Instead, she created the catalyst for its complete reformation. The Wellington name, once synonymous with old money and older prejudices, now stands for supporting military families, advocating for foster children, and building bridges instead of walls. Sometimes I think about that Thanksgiving Day when Eleanor slapped me, when Brittany spat on me, when Derek laughed at my pain. They thought they were breaking me. They couldn't have been more wrong. They were forging me into someone stronger than they could imagine. And when that door opened and Marcus walked in, it wasn't just my husband returning from war. It was justice arriving wearing combat boots and carrying the weight of truth. The Wellingtons had created their worst nightmare, a survivor with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And I'd won. 1 year later, I stood in the garden of our new home watching Hope take her first wobbling steps across the grass. Marcus waited with open arms, his face bright with pride as our daughter stumbled forward, giggling with each unsteady movement. "That's my girl," he encouraged. "Come to Daddy." The house wasn't grand by Wellington standards. No marble foyers or circular driveways, just a modest colonial on 5 acres near Fort Campbell, with room for the rescue horses Marcus had started working with as part of his therapy program for veterans. But it was ours, bought with our own money, filled with our own choices. "She's going to be a runner," Emma observed from the porch where she was organizing files for the Foundation's latest initiative, just like her mom, always moving forward. I smiled, remembering my own determination to keep going during those dark months. Now that same drive lived in our daughter, propelling her toward her father's embrace with unstoppable momentum. The doorbell chimed, and I went to answer it, finding a familiar face I hadn't expected. Brittany stood on our doorstep, looking nothing like the designer-clad princess who'd tormented me. Her hair was its natural brown, now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a volunteer t-shirt from the veterans nonprofit where she worked. "Hi," she said nervously. "I know I should have called first." "Brittany," I kept my voice neutral. "What brings you here?" I wanted... She paused, gathering courage. "I wanted to apologize, in person, and to give you this." She held out an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. "It's every penny I took from Marcus over the years," she explained. Loans I never intended to repay birthday money. I demanded investments I convinced him to make in my schemes. I've been saving everything I could to pay it back. I looked at the check, then at her. This must have taken you years to save on a bookkeeper's salary. Oh, 14 months, she confirmed. Living in a studio apartment, taking the bus shopping at thrift stores. All the things I used to mock others for doing. Turns out there's honor in earning your own way. Come in, I said, finally stepping aside. She followed me to the kitchen where Marcus looked up in surprise. Hope, distracted by her aunt's arrival, plopped down on her diaper-cushioned bottom and clapped. Brittany. Marcus's voice was carefully controlled. This is unexpected. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said quickly, just to apologize and return what I stole. I know money doesn't erase what I did to Aiden, the cruelty and harassment, but I needed to start somewhere. We sat at our kitchen table, the same scarred wooden piece we'd bought at a yard sale. No pretense and no performance, just three adults navigating the complex terrain of accountability and possible forgiveness. I've been seeing a therapist, Brittany admitted, trying to understand how I became someone who could spit on a pregnant woman, how I could be so cruel to someone whose only crime was loving my brother without a trust fund attached. What did you discover? I asked, genuinely curious. That I was empty, she said simply. Mother raised us to value appearances over substance money, over character. I had everything handed to me and valued none of it. Watching you fight for your family while pregnant and alone, you had more strength in your little finger than I developed in 28 years. Marcus studied his sister with the tactical assessment of a soldier. You've been working at Veterans Bridge Foundation for 6 months. Janet speaks highly of your dedication. It's the first real work I've ever done, Brittany admitted. The first time I've contributed instead of just taking. Those veterans, what they've sacrificed, it puts my petty problems in perspective. Hope crawled over to investigate the visitor, pulling herself up using Brittany's leg. My sister-in-law froze, looking at me questioningly. You can pick her up, I said. She doesn't know our history. To her, you're just a new face to explore. Brittany lifted Hope carefully, tears sliding down her cheeks as the baby patted her face with curious hands. She's beautiful. She has your smile, Aiden, and Marcus's eyes. And her own spirit, Marcus added, fearless like her mother. We talked for 2 hours, carefully navigating the minefield of past wounds and potential futures. Brittany shared her journey through the legal system, the humiliation of prison, the challenge of rebuilding without family money or connections. She learned to cook, budget-use public transportation, all the life skills Eleanor had denied her children in favor of dependence. Derek contacted me last month, she revealed, from wherever witness protection has him. He's working construction, married a nurse who doesn't know his real name. He says manual labor is the first honest thing he's ever done. Is he happy? Marcus asked. I think he's free, Brittany replied, free from mother's expectations and manipulations. He says prison was easier than Sunday dinners at the mansion. That drew a surprised laugh from Marcus. The sound seemed to break something open between the siblings' years of trained competition, giving way to tentative connection. I should go, Brittany said, finally returning Hope to my arms. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better, to be someone who deserves to maybe someday be part of Hope's life, if you'll let me. Marcus and I exchanged glances, years of marriage, allowing silent communication. I saw his willingness to try, tempered by protective instincts. He saw my cautious hope balanced with maternal fierceness. Well, think about it, I said finally. Recovery isn't just about apologizing. It's about consistent change over time. Keep doing the work. We'll see where we all are in another year. She nodded, understanding more than I'd offered, but less than she'd hoped. That's fair. More than fair. Thank you for hearing me out. After she left, Marcus and I sat on the porch while Hope napped in her playpen. The Tennessee mountains stretched blue and hazy in the distance, so different from Connecticut's manicured landscape. Did we do the right thing? He asked. leaving the door open. I don't know, I admitted, but I think about Hope growing up. Do we deny her an aunt who's genuinely trying to change, or do we model what redemption looks like? You continually amaze me, Marcus said. After everything they did, I'm not forgetting, I clarified, or fully forgiving, not yet, but I'm also not Eleanor cutting off anyone who doesn't meet my standards. If Brittany's truly changing, maybe that's the end of the Wellington cycle of cruelty. The screen door opened and Rose emerged carrying a tea tray. She'd been visiting for Hope's first birthday, helping plan the foundation's annual gala. I heard everything, she announced without apology. Sound carries in these old houses. For what it's worth, you handled that beautifully. Were we too easy on her? Marcus asked his grandmother. Oh, too easy, Rose snorted. You gave her hope without promises, accountability, without cruelty. That's wisdom, not weakness. She settled into her rocking chair, a recent addition she'd insisted on buying. Besides, people can change. I did. You were never like Eleanor, I protested. Wasn't I? Rose's eyes grew distant. I was ruthless in business, cold to competitors, harsh with my children. Success was my religion, and money my god. It took losing my son to his wife's manipulation to see what I'd created. The Eleanor monster was partly my doing, teaching him to value wealth over wisdom. But you changed, Marcus pointed out. Because someone gave me the chance, Rose smiled. Just like you're giving Brittany, not absolution, but opportunity. There's a difference. That evening, we hosted our monthly dinner for military families in the area. Our dining room filled with laughter and chaos as children played between the legs of parents, sharing deployment stories and resources. These gatherings had become legendary, a safe space for those navigating the unique challenges of military life. Sarah, whose husband was currently deployed to Syria, bounced Hope on her knee while venting about her mother-in-law's latest interference. She keeps telling everyone I'm probably cheating while Jim's gone. Actually hired a private investigator to follow me. Document everything. I advise passing her the green beans. Every accusation, every harassment, build your case before you need it. Listen to Aiden, another spouse, Mike chimed in. She literally wrote the book on surviving toxic in-laws during deployment. He wasn't exaggerating. My blog posts about the Wellington saga had been compiled into a guide for military families facing civilian harassment. The JAG office distributed it at briefings and support groups, used it as a discussion starter. The key is remembering you're not alone, I continued. Their power comes from isolation. Break that, and you break them. As the evening wound down, I stood at the window watching taillights disappear down our driveway. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my head. Proud of you, he murmured. For what? For turning our nightmare into a lifeline for others. For showing Brittany grace when you had every right to slam the door. For being the mother and woman you are. I leaned back into his warmth. We survived, Marcus. Not just the deployment or your family's attacks, but the aftermath, too. We could have let it make us bitter, closed off. Instead, we opened our home and hearts wider. Speaking of opening wider, he said, his hand sliding to my stomach, when do we tell everyone? I covered his hand with mine, feeling the slight swell of our second child growing within. Let's wait until after the gala. Rose will go into planning overdrive if she knows she's getting another great-grandchild. Twin boys run in my family, he teased. Don't you dare jinx us, I laughed, turning in his arms. One baby at a time is plenty. We stood there in our kitchen, in our home, in our life, built on our terms. No marble or mansions, no trust funds or society connections. Just love, chosen family, and the knowledge that we'd earned every bit of happiness we'd found. My phone buzzed with a notification. The prison email system showed a message from Eleanor, her weekly attempt at contact I never opened. With Marcus watching, I deleted it, unread, then blocked the sender permanently. No more, I said firmly. She's had enough of our energy. No more, he agreed, kissing my forehead. Only forward from here. Later that night, I checked on Hope one last time before bed. She slept peacefully, arms flung wide in complete trust that the world would catch her if she fell. I adjusted her blanket, whispering a promise I made every night. You are loved, you are wanted, you belong. Simple truths I'd never heard growing up. Simple truths that would form the foundation of her life. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the nursery mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the scared nurse who'd fallen in love with a soldier at a charity event. She wasn't the isolated military spouse who'd endured months of psychological torture. She wasn't even the survivor who testified in court with steady voice and clear eyes. She was all of those women and none of them. Transformed by trial, strengthened by survival, softened by love. A foster child who'd created her own family. A military spouse who'd refused to be broken. A mother building a legacy of resilience instead of manipulation. Eleanor had been right about one thing. I was nobody from nowhere with no family name or inherited wealth. But that nobody had brought down an empire built on cruelty. That nowhere girl had created somewhere beautiful to belong. That familyless foster child had built a family stronger than blood. And tomorrow, I'd wake up and do it all over again. Not because I had to fight anymore, but because I'd learned the greatest revenge against those who try to tear you down, living beautifully, loving freely, and lifting others as you rise. The Wellingtons had taught me well, just not the lessons they'd intended. As I share this story with you, I wonder, have you ever faced someone who tried to break you because of where you came from? How did you find the strength to keep going when everything seemed stacked against you? Drop a comment below and share your own story of resilience. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that you're not alone in facing family challenges, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they can survive their own toxic situation, share this story with them. Thank you for letting me share our journey with you. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and the family you choose can be more powerful than the family you're born into. Until next time, hold your loved ones close and never let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve the love you've found.